Hello everyone. It's been about 2 weeks since I recorded the last video, so clearly I'm not doing great at, keeping up with the games, which are about every week. But I wanted to do another That Time in Rogue Trader video because it's getting good, and I want to tell you about the assault on the compound, which ended up being quite interesting. It began, I suppose, with them all in Concordia, which happened in the session before the session when I had the Grand Assault. And basically I had them set up for the assault, and then the session I started was like, okay, here's how this is going to work. Now, the Dark Eldar compound was on a continent that I didn't give a name to, because, yeah, we don't name everything. Secret of GMs, we don't name everything. I probably should. At least not all of us. It was on a continent, and that was home to the Yokai ethnic group, which I had talked about a little bit, but basically, they had been living on this continent, and there had been several earthquakes, flooding, coastline erosion, tsunamis over the course of a couple decades, and it had just the entire continent was basically just not in any fit shape to live in. It was a small, like Australia size, so it wasn't like a huge thing, but it was unlivable. So they yokai people had evacuated and moved to other places and settled in other continents. And the only people left on the continent were various Hazian rebel groups. So they were kind of as the base of operations. What was left of the Hazian rebellion, which had mostly been put down, was kind of camping out on this continent. It was a kind of situation like the Korean War, where the war ended for all intents and purposes, but there was no treaty signed, so there was some diplomatic negotiation between the two sides ish. Um, also, Colonel Humperdinck was sleeping with a lot of the rebels, so he had actually several bastard daughters who were living among the rebels. But he had contacted one of them to see what they had a vague idea of where to go. That they had pulled because they interrogated the prisoner, and Martin Morptouch had used a mind probe technique on their Dark Eldar prisoner to try to figure out what the deal was. One thing Leonard was one thing he was most scared of was other Dark Eldar. Suspicious. B, that this their base of operations was on this continent. So they found that out, and they went to the High King, and they told him what they'd found. His name was Cashaw Jones. Yeah, I named him after a Critical Role character. That was a thing I did. The crew of the effective line went to the king and said, we have good intel that there's something going on in this continent. And of course, that was right in rebel territory. So he had Colonel Humperdinck talk to some of his contacts within the rebel group, and they found out that there was a weird compound being built, but nobody had gone in or out. But they weren't bothering anybody, and there was more immediate concerns, so nobody had really investigated it. They just kind of, because they weren't hurting anyone on this planet, they were kind of letting it sit, which they were smuggling in slaves from other planets because reasons. But the rebels didn't realize that. So the rebel leader sent a guide to help them locate it, and they got asked for some help from the PDF, and got a large squadron of PDF troops to help them out as well. And they were going to go try to figure this out. Now they got a boat. It was not too far over water from the coast of Lycia, which was where they were. So they took a boat out, just sailed across, and met with a rebel guide at the coast when they disembarked, who then led them to the compound across treacherous rock formations that were filled with boiling sulfuric salt water and stuff. A lot of natural hazards. Luckily, the guide NPC rolled really well. I actually read up stats for her. Well, okay. I gave her the same stats as I gave the PDF NPCs. Just I gave her a slightly different weapon. But they all had the same basic stats. And then I gave another set of stats for the Dark Eldar at the compound. I did 2 sets of stats for this. Ahead of time, mind you, which is more prep than I usually do, to be fair. And that they had full sets of stats was impressive. But yeah. they went to this compound, and then they had to get over. So I had everyone roll. Howdred rolled really badly on that, so luckily the NPC rolled, like, I think single digits on the thing where you're trying to roll low. So she managed to keep Howdred from doing anything terrifyingly bad, but it was a close call. And then they were good over the wall of the compound. Howdred, I gave him like a. So the captain was there for that. So she was. The player had to go eat dinner, basically. So she was. So I didn't have her roll for crossing the difficult terrain because the player wasn't actually there for that, and then she came back. Is how it went. And but the captain has a special ability because Rogue Trader, as a career path, you have a special ability called, I don't remember what it's called, but basically you can give every turn in combat situation, you can give any of your allies a +10 on one roll. Basically, that's it. You can do that every turn, just once as a turn, and it's not even like a bonus action or something. You can just do it, and yeah. So she gave Howdred, was like, okay, I'm gonna give Howdred the morale boost, basically. And so when he rolled 1 under the plus 10, which was what he needed. So it was like super close, him getting over the wall. It was I believe it was as a strength check, I want to say. Yeah, I ran a characteristic check on strength, and he rolled 9 more than his strength, which is considerable. But because of the captain's +10, he managed it. But it was a close call, and I think, no, it wasn't a strength check. It was a agility check. I remember this because Martin Warptouch has high agility and managed to just like backflip over the wall. It was like an acrobatics check, basically. And yeah, so they climbed over the wall into this compound, and there was it was basically on pillars above the ground because really there was no other way to build for that. So they had 3 buildings. The first one was human prisoners in cold storage, who they went and checked on, and then we're like, okay, we'll come back to them. The second one was a hangar with ships and a few people that they managed to take down very quickly. And the third was the main assault, main bunker. And so the first thing they did was go in, and they had gotten into a firefight with the first couple of Eldar Guard. Now, the Eldar Guard all had the same. They were kind of shuriken cannons. They were all the same. And they managed to take them down. And then at that point, it took a lot longer to play than to explain. So at that point, it was the end of the session. And I was like, or it was getting late and I had to go to work. So I was like, okay, we'll end the session here now that you're in a kind of calmer place and you've taken out all of the you've taken out most of the Eldar, and at least the ones downstairs, and no one seems to be moving. So you'd have to go upstairs after them, basically. So we ended the session with, okay, you're going to go upstairs after the rest of the Dark Eldar. And the only noteworthy thing was happened was that I think Martin had pulled off his scarf to bite one of the Dark Eldar, and the Planetary Defense Force squadron freaked out about that, and there was a whole tense discussion with them about what is acceptable and not, and mutations are definitely not acceptable as the God Emperor, but he was a rogue traitor, and that was a whole thing. Yeah. Okay, this is getting kind of long, but and the assault is actually very interesting in and of itself. So what I'm going to do is end this video here, and then next time I'm going to tell the tale of the assault on the compound, the assault on the upstairs part of the compound, the final showdown with the last of the Dark Eldar and what they found. And yeah, love you guys. Thanks for listening. I will hopefully have the next video sooner. Bye.